We are now beginning Kuf Yud Aleph with the Gemara's Kash of Tesiv Gabe. So again, just to reiterate, we have a man who was married to both a Ketana and a Chereshes. He died, and these two fell for Yibum to his brother. And Rav advocates that first, he, the Yavam, should implement Yibum with the Chereshes, then divorce her, and then when the Ketana becomes a Gedola, then there should be Chalitza. So the Gemara says the following. Why does Rav insist that the Yavam divorce the Chereshes? Tesev Gabe. The Chereshes can remain married to the Yavam after the Bia. And if he gives Chalitza to the Ketana when she becomes a Gedola, or alternatively, if he has a Bia with her, that would not passel her onto the Chereshes and force him to give her a get. He could be miyabim the Chereshes and continue that marriage relationship despite what's going to happen later with the Ketana. And again, the issue is going to be by Yisechad v'lo shnei bat. What we have here in Mimonach. Knuya, he, on that side that a Chereshes is Knuya, a full-fledged Ishus, Ha Knuya he, then when the husband who had a full-fledged Kinyan on that side in the suffix with a Chereshes dies, the Yavam inherits that same exact relationship. So his relationship to the Yavama is Knuya on that side. And therefore, the law of the Ketana, the status of the Ketana is such that she should be out of the ballpark as far as Yibum is concerned. Teitze. Like, for example, if a man dies with two wives and he leaves two Yevamos, so the Yibum of one of them frees the other one. Now, there was a Zika to the Chereshes, and we're going on the side of Knuya, so it's a full-fledged Zika. Once that Zika is upgraded through Yibum to a full-fledged Ishus, the Zika is gone, even as far as the Tzara, in this case, the Ketana is concerned. So therefore, the Bia or the Chalitza of the Ketana is not going to generate an Isser on the Chereshes. Meaning, you might apply the principle of Kevan Shecholatz, Shuv Eino Miyabim. He cannot be Bona after the Chalitza, anyone in that household, any of the Yevamos. But we're not going to apply that in this case, because he was already miyabim the Chereshes. The ilav knuyahi. Now we go going to the other side. And that is lav knuyahi. So the deceased did not have a kinyan on the Chereshes, and therefore, ipso facto, the Yavam inheriting the position of the Niftar does not have a kinyan on the Chereshes. So therefore, Hanachris Bialmahi. She doesn't fall for Yibum at all. She wasn't even married to his brother, according to that side of Lav Knuyahi. So certainly in that case, the Bia of, or the Chalitza of the Ketana would not in any way generate an Isser on her. So why again does Rav insist that he give a divorce to the Chereshes? She could remain in his marriage relationship even after the Ketana had Chalitza. Again, when she becomes a Gedol. Now Rav says, no, he's got to divorce the Chereshes. So Rav Chisda says, I got to derive the conclusion in order to understand what underlies the logic of Rav's ruling that the Chereshes is Knuya Mishuyeres. And therefore, her Yibum has no impact on the Shniya, because the Shniya, the Ketana, might be Knuya. And therefore, he's not allowed to remain married to the Chereshes, because if we assume on one side that the kinyan of the Ketana is a kinyan Gomur, that's a greater kinyan than he has with the Chereshes, which is only Mishuyeres. It's only a Mishuyer. It's like a, Shirayim. It's just a leftover partial Zika, partial Ishus, I should say. Therefore, when he has beer with the Chereshes, with a weak Ishus, that doesn't pater the Ketana from Yibum and Chalitza, because she has a kinyan that's superior to that of the Chereshes on that side of Knuya, because Knuya means Knuya Legamre. So now what happens is that when this Ketana becomes a Gdola, Chalitza is going to generate an Isser on the Chereshes because of Kevad Shalobana Shuvlo Yivne. And because of the kinyan Ishus, which is a kinyan Gomer in this side, in the Ketana, therefore, when the Ketana gets Chalitza, that's Kevad Shalobana. And there's no way that the Yavam could marry any other of the women that fell for Yibam through this deceased. V'chi tema, and if you'll argue that even if this Ketana is Knuya V'ena Knuya, the Chereshes is Mishuyeres, so you'll still ask me, Ketana my tamkin ashetagdil v'tichlot teisiv gabei. In other words, why can't he be the Yabe the Ketana? And she remain his wife. Why does she have to get Chalitza? She's got a full-fledged kinyan. And now the Gemara bolsters this kasha with the Bimonach. If it's a kinyan Gamur, ha-knuyahi, and therefore, when he's miyabim the Ketana, it's a full-fledged yibum, and it's mafkia the zika to the Chereshes, so you have no problem. V'ilav knuyahi, nochrius b'alma, she's a nochris, and there's no reason to generate any Isser on her. And the Gemara answers, in Cain, if he would be miyabim the Ketana first and foremost, and remain in that marriage relationship, then Chereshes b'mod tepuk. How is he going to pater up the Chereshes? Below klumi efsha. Because maybe the Ketana is not Knuya, which means that the Maisa Yibum or Chalitza done to the, in this case, Yibum done to the Ketana would not pater the Chereshes because she's a Nachris if you're holding Lav Knuya. So the Chereshes now needs Yibum. And that means she's Asur L'Shuk without Chalitza. But Chalitza to a Chereshes is impossible because Chereshes cannot perform Chalitza. She doesn't have Kriya. He can't be Miyabim her because maybe the Ketana is Knuya, which would mean that the Chereshes is in the web of Kevet Shalobana Shuvlo Yivne, or to be more precise, Bais Echad V'lo Shnei Batim. So the only possible way out or method of being Meshachrer the Chereshes is to be Miyabim her first, and then to divorce her. And Rav, you might say, well, why do you have to be matir her? But Rav wants to make sure that there's a tikkun for the Chereshes and for the Yevamot, for the Ketana as well. So we're up to Amar Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes is now going to try to prove or support Rav Chisda. That Chereshes is Knuya Mitruyeres, Ktana is a Safei Knuya V'eno Knuya. This Sanya we learned in a Brisa. This Brisa is going to occupy our minds for a while. Shnei Achim Nesuim Shtei Achios. Two brothers are married to two sisters. One of them is a Ktana, the other one is a Chereshes. So the point here is that one is a Ktana, one is a Chereshes. If both of them were Ktano, so both of them were Chereshes, or if, let's say, it was a Nesuin Doraisa, in both cases, then the din would be that we have Achos Ishto, and there's no Yibum in the case of Ervas Achos Ishto. So there would be no Oser of Achos Kukos, because there is no Zika, because it's an Erev. But here it's a little different. Why? Because one is a Chereshes, the other is a Ktana, and each one has a certain additional element, a superior element in Adifus. Right? One is going to become a Gdola, the other is now ready for Bia, whatever it might be. So as a result, there's a tzad to say there's a Zikas Yibum for both of these two women. And then we get into what's called Achos Kukasa. So what's the din? Meis Bala Shel Ktana. So the Ktana now falls for Yibum to the husband who's married to her sister, the Chereshes. He's the Yava. In such a case, Chereshes Yotza beget. So again, she's Asura, the Chereshes bidin Achos Kukasa. And again, there's no option here of Yibum of the Chereshes, because the Ktana might be a Kinyan Gomor. So that an Isha She'eda Gemura of Mishuyeres in the case of a Chereshes could not break up through Yibum the Zika to the Ktana. The Zika to the Ktana is superior because she's Knuya B'Kinyan Gomor. She has a full-fledged Zika. So therefore, he has to be Megarish the Chereshes. Uktana tamtin chetagdil v'tachlos. Again, there are a number of questions that we have to raise over here. For example, why doesn't the Chereshes need chalitza? And the answer to that might be because the chalitza, the Ktana, will serve to be matir the Chereshes. But maybe that means that the Chereshes Yotzes beget only after the chalitza is implemented to the Ktana. And then we have to ask the question why the Ktana could not have Yibum. So that we have an answer to. Because she's Achos Ishto, at least b'miktzas, because he's married to her sister who's the Chereshes, who has a kinyan b'miktzas. So there is an Isra of Achos Ishto b'miktzas. And therefore, to be mafkir the Zika to the Ktana, he's going to have to give a chalitza. So that's a case of Meis Paila Shel Ktana. Now we turn it around the other way. Meis Paila Shel Chereshes. So now the Chereshes falls for Yibum to the Yavam who's married to her sister, the Ketana. Is Ketana Yotza Beget. The Ketana now becomes Achos Ziku Koso, and that's based on the fact that maybe the Ketana is Ena Knuya. Meaning that since the Chereches has at least a Miktsas Kinyan, and there's a tzad that the Ketana has 0 Kinyan, the Ketana cannot push off the Chereches. The Chereches has a Kinyan Vada, albeit a Kinyan Mishuyar, but a Kinyan Vada. So she definitely has a Zika, and now the Ketana becomes a Chos Kukasa. So there's no option to be Miyabi the Ketana. The Chereches Asur Liola. No, this is no solution to the problem of the Chereches. He can't marry her, be Miyabim her, right? Because she's a Chos. And let's say even after the Ketana receives the get, he cannot marry the Chereches, she's a Chos Krushaso. He can't give a Chalitza because the Chereches is excluded from Chalitza. There's no option here. There's no way out. Unbelievable. This Chereches has no way out. There's no way he could marry her because she's a Chos Krushaso. There's no way he could be Choleitzar because a Chereches is not capable of Chalitza. And there is a Zikas Yibum by virtue of the fact that there's a Kinyan Mishuyar in the case of a Chereches. She has no way out. But the Imbala Chereches, if the Yavam created facts on the ground and he divorces the Ketana, and then he has a relationship with the Chereches, then no say law get for Hutra. The Brisa recognizes the validity of the get, even though it was created by illegitimate circumstances, and now the Chereches could marry anyone. And we go through a Mimanavshach. And this is going to be Rav Sheshes' proof for Ra, the way Rav Chizna interpreted Ra. If the Ketana is Knuya Legamre, then the Chereches doesn't have a Zikas Yibum at all, because she's Achos Zukukasa. Well, I think we could even say it better. Forget about Achos Zukukasa. She's Achos Ishta. More or less the same. Because the Ketana is now Knuya Legamre. So the Chereches is the sister of his Knuya Legamre, meaning she's Achos Isha. Now, if that be the case, then the Chereches is not Kukal Yibum, and when he has Bia with the Chereches, that's just a Bias Nus. Now, let's say that the Ketana is Eina Knuya Klal, according to that side. Then the Chereches is the Yevamot, and the Bia is a Bias Yibum, and it generates a Kinyan. And then he gives her a get, and she doesn't need any Chalitza. It's like a case of Yevamot. After Yibum, he gives her a get and Farta Kamaisa. So this is the Mimanavshach to explain the case where Ba'al Chereches. But if it wasn't Bia with the Chereches, then Chereches Asur Liola. Again, all this is based on the fact that Ketana is Knuya V'Eina Knuya, Chereches is Michuyeres. Iyamrit Bishlema, Chereches Knuya Michuyeres. So Ketana Knuya ve'ena mishares mishum hachi. Then we understand very well the last din in the brisa that the chibal achereches nothing like get v'hutra. She doesn't need chalitza because we might have shot. Either she didn't fall for yibum at all because she's achos ishto, or she was the real Yevamot. Will the real Yevamot stand up? And if after Yibum and after Bia, all she needs is a get, she doesn't need Chalitza. The Abbot Mimanav Shach, Ik Tana Knuyala, Hanafka Mishumachos Isha. The Lav Knuya Shaper Miyabim. Eli Amrit, now if I argue from the opposite way, before we had Rav Chizd, that Cheresh is Knuya Vishena Knuya. She's the suffix. And Tana's Knuya Mitriyera, she's a partial Ichus, is Kiba al Chereshes, Amai no saying get vahutra. Right? There's going to be a tzad to say that the Chereshes is Knuya Legamre, which means she has a full-fledged Zika, and she must have a Chalitza. And now the Gemara introduces a concept called Bia Psula. So again, let's read the Gemara again. Amai no saying get vahutra. How do you allow this Chereshes to go free to the shuk with get without chalitza, since we say that Chereshes might be Knuya Legamre, and the Ketanis Kinyan is only a weak Kinyan, a partial Kinyan of Mishuyar, and the Chereshes is the sister of the Ketana, and the Ketana, as we said before, has a Vadai Kinyan, at least b'Mishuyar. So he's not allowed to have bia with her, with the Chereshes, because that's achos ishto b'miktas, and therefore if he goes ahead and has bia with her, that's an illegitimate bia, havile bia psula. Ubia psula lo patra. A bia psula is not considered, at least on a rabbinic level, as if he was miyabim her in such a way that she no longer needs chalitz and all she needs to get, but we discount and disqualify that bia as yibum, and therefore she needs chalitza. And in the case of a chereshes, there's no option of chalitza. So how are you matel a shuk with a get when she needs chalitza? She cannot have chalitza, and therefore we must assume that Rav Chizda, the way he interpreted Rav, is correct, that a ktan is a suffix knuya legamre, whereas a chereshes is vadai knuya b'miktas. And therefore the bia is not a bia poseles because of the iman of shach that we explained. Now the Gemara rejects. Hamani Rabbi Nechemia diamar bia psula poteres mechalitza. Maybe I could go back to the original assumption that chereshes is knuya v'yena knuya, a suffix. Katana is knuya mishuyeres. And if you ask the kasha, why is it that if the Yavam had bia with the chereshes, then she's ptura from tzikas yibum? And how could that be if chereshes has a suffix etzad to say knuya? The answer is Hamani Rabbi Nechemi Diyamar bia psula potes michalitza. That means that even though the bia with the chereshes is a bia psula, nevertheless it patters up the chalitza. And Mameli gives her again. She's muteres, so the Gemara rejects this. Rabbi Nechemi is safer. You cannot. Well, what's the word I'm looking for? Reconcile. You cannot reconcile Rabbi Nechemi with the sefer. What happens in the sefer of this brisa? The brisa is talking about a case of a man that was married to both a Ketana and a Chereshes, and these two women are sisters. Mishal Yanasui Shtei Yisomos, Ketana v'Chereshes. Okay, the word Yisoma is a little bit strange in the case of Chereshes, because Chereshes doesn't matter whether she's a Yisoma or not. Okay, but Agav Urcha, since he's mentioning Ketana, so he used the word Yisomos in the plural. Okay, fine. Ba hayavam ala Ketana So either he himself, the Yavam, after having beer with the Ketana, has a beer with the Chereshes, or Oba Achiv, or another one of the Yevamim, his brother, has a relation with the Chereshes. Nesru Shteya, the Chereshes and the Ketana become a surah on the Yavam, who is Miyabim the Ketana. Let's go through both of them. The Chereshes is Asura Olav, because there's a tzad to say that the kinyan of the Ketana is a kinyan Gamur, and that's mafkia the Zika to the Chereshes once he implements Yibum with the Ketana. So the Chereshes is now Asuralo, like any case where two women fall for Yibum and he's Miyabim one of them. The Ketana, technically, and the Gemara is going to deal with this very soon, should be Muteris as a result of the Knuya law and the Kiyum Yibum, because if she's not Knuya at all, she's just a Nachris, which would mean there's no Iser, even if he has Bia with the Chereshes, because she's not even in the Parsha of Zikas Yibum. So in Manaf she should be Muteris. With the Chachamim, we're going to have an Iser here because maybe he'll switch around the sequence of the Bios. We'll see that momentarily. Ketzad Takanosam. How can you be talking these two women, these two tzaros? Chereshes Yotzeis beget. And now we're going to apply the Bimanafsha. In order to be mater, the Chereshes lashuk with a get without chalitza. If the kinyan of the Ketana was a kinyan Gamur, then that patters the Chereshes from chalitza. And if the kinyan of the Ketana is nothing, then the bia with the Chereshes is a bias yibum. And Mabela, after bias yibum, he consummated the marriage, and now he just has to divorce her with a get. Uktana tamtinat shetagdil v'techlos. So again, as we said before, Bikar did. He should be able to give her a get and be mater to the shuk, because he was Makayim, the mitzvah of Yibum. But the Rabbanan nevertheless required Chalitza to be matter the shuk, as we'll soon see why. Iyamrit Bishlema, Chereshes Knuya, Meshuyaris Uktana Knuya Vena Knuya. For Rabbanan, he who hold that Chalitza Psula is Ena Materes, Epia Psulo Patra Mi Yibum. So in the Reisha, in the case of the Chereshes that fell for Yibum, and the Yavam was married to her sister who's a Ketana, if the Yavam had a relationship with the Yevamot, and he gave a get to the Chereshes, so again, he was Miyabim the Ketana. No, let's go slowly. First and foremost, as I said before, he was miyabbing the Chereshes. Then he gives her a get. And that's because the bia with the Chereshes patters her up imanavsha. And now we understand the Sefer. When a Ketana and a Chereshes fall for Yibum for one brother, if the Yavam would have a relation with the Ketana and then have a relation with the Chereshes, then the Chereshes is Yotza beget, and the Ketana will get, when she becomes a Gedol, she'll get Chalitza. So the question now is, why does the Ketana need Chalitza? As we said before, if she's Knuya Legamri, then that's Yibum, and that should be okay. And if she's Eina Knuya, she's a Nachris, and the beer should be Muteris. There's no Zikas Yibum, there's no Chos Kukas or any of those Isurim. So the Gemara says, Mishum Hachi Tamtin at Shetagdil B'Tachlos. Why do we wait and then we give a Chalitza? No possibility of Yibum. The Dilma Kadimu Bal Charesh Inspiration. We're afraid that maybe he'll switch around the order. He'll have Bia with the Chereshes first, and then he'll have Bia with the Ketana, and he'll come to the conclusion that now he could pater both of them with a get. Each one will get a get. But mitzad adin, the Ketana needs Chalitza. And this is all based on the principle of Bia Psula, Eino Poteres. Because the Bias Ketana cannot patter up the Ketana because he had a Bia first with the Chereshes. And once he had a Bia with the Chereshes, then the Bia with the Ketana becomes a Bia Psula because these are Shnei Batin. So with the Bia of the Chereshes, if he had preempted with that Bia, the Ketana could not be Ptura because it's possible that she's Knuya Legamre. The Chereshes is only Knuya B'Mishuyar. And he's going to have to give the Ketana both a get and Chalitza. Rabbi Nechemia, if you're going to argue from Rabbi that the Bryce is holding like Rabbi Nechemia, Omar Bia Psula Patra, El Shmami No, we have to assume Rabbanon he. And then we go back to the raya that we brought from this Bryce to Rav Chizda Shmami No. Omar Rav Ashi may Reisha from the din that we saw in the ratio of two sisters, Nami Shmamino, the Rabbanon. Rav Ashi thinks that we can prove that Rabbi Nechemia is out of the question here in terms of the authorship of the Brisa from the ratio of the Brisa, the din of Shtei Achios. The Katani, what does it say in the ratio of the Brisa? You have two brothers that are married respectively to a Ketana and a Chereshes, who are sisters, and the Baal of the Chereshes dies. The Chereshes now falls even to the Baal Ketana. Im ba al Chereshes, he went ahead and, as we said before, he put the facts down on the ground and he had a beer with the Chereshes illegally. No sin lo get v'hutra. Below Ketani, it doesn't say in the Brisa that in a case where the husband of the Ketana dies, Shim Bala Ketana no sin lo get v'hutra. The reason for that is we must be reflecting the sheet of the Chachamim, and therefore, if he'll have beer with the Ketana, then that beer could not patter her up from Yibam and Chalitza, or from Chalitza in this case, because it's a Chalitza Psula, because she's the sister of the Chereshes. And the Chereshes is Knuyel B'Mixas. So the beer with the Yevama Ketana is a beer Psula, and it cannot be Mafkia Hazika. On the other hand, she has a Kenyan Mishuyar. I'm sorry, the Chereshes has a Kenyan Mishuyar, and that's not enough, powerful enough to be Docha the Ketana from Yibum. So it's possible that the Yibum, in the case of Ketana, is based on Kenyan Gamu, and therefore the Ketana must have Chalitza. It's not enough to have a get. So you see that our Brisa must be authored by the Rabbanon, not like Rab Nechemia, and Chalitza Psula Eino Poteres. Gemara rejects it and says, Ivishum Ha Lo Ira. That's not a proof. We could deflect that proof, and we could say that the Brisa really reflects the Shita of Nechemia. The Tana, the Brisa omitted mention of a case where the Yavam violated the din and had a beer with the Ketana, like it did by Chereshes. That's because Chereshes, the Leslie Takanta de Tera, Ketani Takanta de Surah. The only time the Bryce is going to mention a takana that came through Easter when he illegitimately had a beer with her is the case of Chereshes, because the Chereshes, as we said, doesn't have a capacity of chalitza. So Leslie takanta liola is therefore, we could push it a little bit and mention the takanta di surah in a case where the Yavam violated the Easter and he had a beer with the Chereshes. But Ketana, it's like takanta de Teira. Why? Because we could wait until she's a Gedola and then we could have chalitza. We don't have that luxury in a Chereshes. It's lo tani takanta di surah. And this leads us to the Mishnah here at the bottom of Daf Kuf Yud Aleph, Omid Aleph. Misha Yanasui, Lishtei Yisovos Ktanos Umates. So we have a case of two Ktanos who fall for Yibum. Ba Yavam ala Rishona, he is Miyabim. Again, this is all Rabbanon, one of the two Yisomos. V'chazar ubal ashniya. And then he had beer with the other Yavam, the other Ktan. O sheba achiv al ashniya. Or the other brother who's still alive, the other Yavam had beer with the Shniya.